An inside look into the Cleveland Mafia. During the early 1900s, Cleveland was littered with loosely organized Italian gangs running their black hand extortion tactics on their fellow immigrants. Early on, Cleveland lacked a traditional organized crime family to consolidate the city's rackets. The two most prominent families in Cleveland's Little Italy were the Lonardos and the Pirellos. Both families were from Licata, Sicily, and worked together in a sulfur mine the Pirellos owned. They were considered allies at the time. The most prominent of the Lonardo brothers was the second eldest, Joseph Lonardo, a produce dealer and bakery owner who employed several Pirello family members. Lonardo and his brothers were originally legitimate businessmen, but they soon branched out into extortion and robbery. Around 1913, they formed a loosely organized Italian gang known as the Mayfield Road Mob in Cleveland's Little Italy neighborhood. This was a precursor to the Cleveland LCN family. Once Prohibition began, the Lonardos ramped up the criminal activity. They began taking over the Mayfield Road Mob and organizing it, turning it into the dominant criminal organization in Cleveland. With the start of Prohibition, the Lonardo brothers invested heavy in corn sugar, which was key in the manufacture of corn whiskey, which was the preferred choice of liquor for northern Ohio. They got a large-scale bootlegging operation going, setting up stills in the homes of numerous Italians in the area. So Lonardo sold the corn sugar to home distillers, who in turn sold the corn whiskey back to the mob, who in turn sold the alcohol to local speakeasies at very high prices. More than 1,000 Cleveland residents produced liquor in their own homes during Prohibition. By 1925, law enforcement recognized that home distilling had become so widespread, it became an industrial concern. Lonardo became a sugar baron by encouraging home distillation and using intimidation, murder, and theft to eliminate or drive his criminal competitors out of business. Lonardo put together what essentially amounted to a monopoly on corn sugar. Through his domination of the corn whiskey industry, Lonardo became the first known boss of the Cleveland crime family. Eventually, the Lonardo-Pirello relationship began to sour. Then in 1924, the Pirellos broke away from the Lonardos and formed their own faction, establishing their headquarters on Woodland Avenue and began selling their own corn sugar, becoming a direct competitor to Lonardo. And because of Lonardo's cutthroat tactics, more and more distillers and whiskey distributors were joining the Pirellos. Meanwhile, Salvatore "Black Sam" Todaro had been Lonardo's top lieutenant but became frustrated with Lonardo's rule because despite largely managing his business, he gained little wealth. Todaro began getting real friendly with the Pirellos. Then when Joe Lonardo left to visit Sicily for a few months, the Pirellos began undercutting Lonardo's prices on corn sugar and took a large portion of his business. When Lonardo returned, he correctly surmised that Todaro had conspired with the Pirellos to undermine his business and kicked him out of the Mayfield Road Mob and took a contract out on his life. It was only because of the intervention of longtime friend and influential mafioso Nicola Gentile did Lonardo rescind the hit, but their relationship couldn't be salvaged. As hostilities continued to escalate, Todaro joined forces with the Pirello family and steered that clan to compete with Lonardo in the corn, sugar, and yeast business. It didn't take long before the treacherous Todaro wanted the top spot for himself and ordered the death of his former boss, Big Joe Lonardo. On October 13, 1927, Big Joe and John Lonardo were to meet with Angelo Pirello in a Pirello-owned barbershop. After the brothers were relaxed and playing a card game, they were ambushed and killed by two Pirello gunmen. This was the start of the infamous Sugar Wars in Cleveland. The throne of the crime family was now vacant and the Lonardo family was devastated. With Joe Lonardo gone, Todaro laid claim to the mantle as the new boss of the Cleveland Mafia, just as planned. Following the murder of Joe Lonardo, Todaro pretended like he wasn't involved. He even provided financial support to Lonardo's widow, Concetta. During a meeting between Todaro and Concetta Lonardo in June of 29, her son, an 18-year-old Angelo Lonardo, and another relative shot Todaro to death, avenging the death of his father, Big Joe Lonardo. By this time, Joseph Pirello, the most prominent brother in the rackets and now the most influential corn sugar baron in Cleveland, ascended to the top of the organization and became the next Cleveland Mafia boss. Pirello's tenure was short, just lasting 3 years before he was brutally gunned down in 1930. Vincenzo "Jim" Pirello succeeded his brother as Cleveland boss, but was shot and killed 3 weeks later in a local grocery store. He barely made the history books. During this time, the Mayfield Road Mob, now led by Frank Milano, gradually replaced the Pirello brothers as Cleveland's premier mafia group. After Joe and Jim Pirello were whacked, Milano took the reins as boss of the family. Milano was able to build up the family, and by 1932 he was considered one of the top mafia bosses in the country and had a seat on the National Commission. On February 25, 1932, Milano finished off any further threat from the Pirello brothers by having Raymond and Rosario Pirello murdered in a smoke shop while playing cards. The remaining Pirello brothers didn't want the smoke and hightailed it out of Cleveland. Then in 1935, Milano fled to Mexico after being indicted for tax evasion. Alfred Polizzi, another leading member of the Mayfield Road mob, seized power and became the next boss. Polizzi's close association with other crime families helped extend the family's reach and gained him a seat on the commission. U.S. Senate investigators widely considered Polizzi to be one of the most influential members of the Mafia in this country. In December of '43, he was arrested on 28 counts of federal liquor and tax law violations. He spent 2 full years in prison and then retired to Florida. John Scalish was the next king of crime in Cleveland and ruled as the family boss for the next 32 years, easily the longest-running tenure in the state's history. His rap sheet dated back to 1930 and included arrests for petty crimes like assault and robbery. Then he seemed to level up and develop into a powerful labor racketeer in Cleveland. Scalish was responsible for the Cleveland family's successful expansion west into Las Vegas and California. He led skimming efforts at several Vegas casinos in partnership with other bosses from Midwest families, while also seeing to it that Cleveland mob associate Mo Dalitz took over the Desert Inn in Vegas. Scalish was a smart and strategic leader. His ability to cultivate relationships with local politicians and court officials helped to divert attention away from the Cleveland mob's activities for much of his tenure as boss. He was very well respected nationwide and was an attendee at the infamous Appalachian meeting in upstate New York in 1957. In the 1950s, the Cleveland family reached its peak in size with about 60 main members and several times as many associates. Here are some other notable members from that era.
Son. Perfect.
Considered one of the top non-Italian mob associates in the country, Shandor Burns came from humble beginnings. As Hungarian Jewish immigrants, the Burns family were very poor. They were one of those families distilling liquor in their homes for Joe Lonardo. His mother was killed in an explosion while tending to the 10-gallons still in their apartment. His father was subsequently arrested for bootlegging, and the 13-year-old Burns was sent to a Jewish orphanage where he had to deal with constant abuse. He would later drop out of school and started selling newspapers before he committed his life to crime and began bootlegging. It didn't take long before Burns developed a reputation as a fierce fighter on the street and racked up stacks of arrests, tallying 18 in a 12-year period. Burns settled in as a career gangster and became one of the city's top policy racketeers and extortionists, specializing in extorting whorehouses with the backing of the Cleveland Mafia. Burns was a well-connected gangster and pretty much took over Cleveland. He forged relationships with important judges, politicians, and police officers in the city and was regarded as a celebrity gangster. He started branching out into legitimate businesses and bought a couple restaurants while also expanding his criminal reach by muscling in on other numbers operators and policy games. He was suspected of several gangland slayings and even hired Danny Greene as an enforcer. He was eventually named Cleveland's public enemy #1 by the press. Although considered a small family, Cleveland was powerful during Scalish's tenure. With the influence they exerted over the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, they profited from widespread labor racketeering and acquired loans from their pension fund to facilitate the casino skimming in Vegas. They also profited from an arrangement they had with the Pittsburgh crime family, in which Pittsburgh kicked them 25% of their take from rackets in Youngstown. Additionally, they collected protection money from casinos in western Pennsylvania and northern Kentucky. As the 70s rolled along, the strength of the Cleveland family slowly diminished as its members aged or died off because Scalish and Polizzi didn't want to make any new members. On May 26, 1976, longtime Cleveland Mafia Don John Scalish died during heart surgery. His death would mark the turning point for the family as a full-scale mob war broke out, causing mass devastation in the city, earning Cleveland the moniker Bomb City, USA. Scalish's death also ushered in the Licavoli regime. The next Cleveland boss would be James Jack White Licavoli. He was known to be an intelligent and calculating mobster. Although Licavoli had a reputation for being a suave guy, he was very tight with his money, so much so that he only used stolen cards while on vacation and was once caught swapping tags on a pair of pants while shopping. James came from a mob family and was cousins to fellow gangsters Peter and Yanni Licavoli. The Licavolis first got involved in criminality in St. Louis as youngsters before relocating to Detroit and helping the Detroit family wrestle control of the city's rackets from the Purple Gang. Licavoli would then forge alliances with Cleveland's Tony's Del Santer and Pittsburgh's James LaRocca. He would become the overseer of the Youngstown rackets for the Cleveland family along with his future underboss and cousin Leo Merceri. Licavoli maintained control over the crime family's Las Vegas operations as well as illegal gambling and local jukebox and vending machine rackets. By 1970, Licavoli had become known as King of the Hill, referring to Murray Hill in Cleveland's Little Italy. Licavoli never married and remained a lifelong bachelor. He lived with a 7-year-old roommate and was even able to draw a monthly Social Security check since he didn't declare his income. Licavoli's tenure would be largely overshadowed by his conflict with Danny Greene, a conflict in which he won but decimated the family. Eventually, Licavoli's longtime friend Jimmy Fratiano turned government witness and gave the feds the goods to convict Licavoli on RICO charges, making him the first mafia boss to go down on the newly created statute. He died of a heart attack while incarcerated in 1985. Licavoli's strongest ally was his cousin and underboss Leonard Merceri, aka Leo Lips, a powerful mafioso in his own right. Born to one of the Union Sicilione's most influential underworld families, Leo picked up his first arrest at age 15 when he was sent to Michigan Boys Republic after being charged with truancy. Merceri continued his criminal activities, garnering multiple arrests for armed robbery. From 1925 through 28, Merceri was arrested 15 different times. Merceri began his mob career in Los Angeles, working as a hitman for Jack Dragna. He became an accomplished hitman with a fearsome reputation and eventually relocated to Cleveland and ran gambling rackets with his cousin Licavoli in Youngstown. Merceri would rise through the ranks of the Cleveland borgata with Licavoli and then was promoted into the administration once Jack White became the boss. Rockman grew up with future Cleveland mob boss John Scalish and was married to his sister, and Scalish was married to Rockman's sister, which put him in the top echelon of the family. Rockman was a highly valued associate and was really good with numbers, so Scalish carved out a position for him as family treasurer. He became one of the most influential racketeers in the country. His relationship with the Teamster leaders helped pave the way for the Cleveland mob to get a piece of that Las Vegas skin. The other prominent non-Italian associate in Cleveland was Danny Greene. Hired to keep the peace for the Cleveland Trade Guild, Danny stood out among the rest and caught the attention of Burns. Impressed with his abilities, Shondor Burns hired him as an enforcer for his various numbers rackets. Greene was a longshoreman and was eventually elected president of the union. It was Frank Brancato who introduced Greene to the underground scene and brought him into the fold of the Cleveland mob. He used Greene as muscle to enforce garbage hauling contracts and other rackets. The relationship between Greene and Burns took a turn for the worse when Greene asked Shondor for a $75,000 loan to set up a gambling spot. Burns arranged a loan through the Gambino family, but his courier spent it on drugs, which was confiscated during a police raid. Burns pressed Greene for the money, but of course Greene wasn't going to pay it back. The money never made it to him. Upset that he's got to eat the loss, Burns decided to whack Greene and put a contract out on his life. When Brancato died in '73, Greene inherited his garbage rackets, but he refused to kick up the normal routine tribute, which sparked a huge conflict with the Cleveland family. For the next several months, both Burns and the Cleveland mob tried to kill Danny Greene, which resulted in several failed assassination attempts. The first casualty of the mob war with Danny Greene was Licavoli's cousin and beloved underboss, Leo Lips Merceri. In the summer of '76, Merceri was in a heated dispute with Greene and his ally, John Nardi. Shortly thereafter, Lips went missing. Authorities eventually recovered his Mercedes and found his blood in the trunk. His body was never found. Nardi began his mob work as an enforcer for the local vending machines workers union. He then became a corrupt labor leader, eventually securing a position as secretary-treasurer for the vending machine service employees local 410. Nardi soon ran street rackets as well, but was too independent and ambitious to accept the mob structure. Frustrated that he had been made and not content to wait years to earn his button, Nardi eventually stopped paying tribute to the family. He then approached Greene for an alliance, because if you're going to take on the mob, you're going to need allies. After a few failed attempts, they finally got Nardi on May 17, 1977. As Nardi approached his car, he was blown apart when a bomb that was placed in the car next to him was detonated. In March of '75, Burns too succumbed to a car bomb. He was blown several feet through the roof of his car and his torso landed near the passenger door. Burns had been blown in half, his severed legs landed 50 feet away, and other smaller parts of him were scattered all over the place. Then the mob planted a bomb in Greene's apartment building, but that didn't work either. One of the bombs didn't detonate, and the one that did impacted the other side of the apartment, so Greene wasn't seriously injured. Mike Fredo was a longtime friend of Greene's who also got involved in the unions. However, he and Greene got into a heated dispute because Fredo refused to play ball with any kind of corruption. Art Sneppinger was Greene's underling and right-hand man. He did all the grunt work for Danny. Although at some point, Art became a confidential informant and was feeding law enforcement information about Danny. Sneppinger often placed the bombs on the target's cars, and Danny ordered him to bomb Fredo's car. As Sneppinger approached the car with the bomb, Danny hit the detonator early, blowing Sneppinger to bits. No one knows if that was an accident or if Greene did that intentionally because he found out he's an informant. Fredo now knew Danny was trying to kill him, so he caught up with Danny while he was jogging and took shots at him, but he missed, and Danny pulled out his pistol and blew him away. That's right, Danny was packing heat while jogging. The Cavoli and the Cleveland mob leaders were determined to get Greene. They decided to seek outside help and enlisted the services of LA hitter Ray Ferrito. They tapped Danny's phone and found out he had a dentist appointment coming up, so they loaded a bomb into a car, and while Greene was at his appointment, the bomb car was moved into the spot directly next to Greene's car. When Greene was done with his appointment, he left the building, and as he approached his car, the bomb was detonated and Greene was killed instantly, blown apart in the parking lot. And with that, Danny Greene was no more, and the bloody mob war in Cleveland was over. There were so many bombs used during the war, it earned Cleveland the moniker Bomb City, USA. In 1976 alone, 36 bombs exploded in or around the Cleveland area. Here are some other notable members from the era. The Cleveland family is hanging on by a thread. These days, the Cleveland crime family is a small group of mostly old-timers, bookies, and loan sharks. They've been described as almost a benign group with limited formal structure. In other words, they're still around but on life support.